Vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Vibe code.
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Vibe coding.
Anyone can vibe code in 2026. The question is, can you actually ship it? The hard part of building software is not about writing code anymore. It's everything that happens before and after. Now, AI can generate working apps in minutes, but that's where most people stop. There's a graveyard of side projects that never made it to production. That's because most tutorials skip the enterprise solutions and reliable deployment altogether. In this video, we'll go over hosting, backend, database, authentication, user management, everything that you need to take your project from a side project to something that you'd actually put your name on. And before you ask, you don't need any software knowledge. I'm not a software developer. I'm a product manager working at the University of Cambridge. And today, we'll build a real app, deploy it, and have it live on the internet. And all the tools we'll be using is completely free. So if I can do it, so can you. Let's have a look.
Let's jump into an example. Today, we're going to build a news app. Before I start, it's incredibly important that you have detailed requirements and specifications. Vibe coding is only as good as your requirements. So for this example, I've decided to build an app called Briefed. It's a news app, it's mobile first, it's personalized, and it delivers curated news, local and global, and it pulls that from a free news API. I've decided to go with newsdata.io, but you can go with any other API, any other data. And the reason I want to pull in some information with API is to show you how the whole integration works with a database and a backend and user authentication. So before we start, ensure you have a Supabase account. This is essentially where you store your database, where you have your authentication. Supabase is free, gives you 2 free projects, and is generally speaking quite simple, but you can use any other app that you prefer. Additionally, sign up to Netlify, because this is where you can deploy code, essentially hosting your app, and it's also free. And lastly, if you don't have an account with GitHub, you should create one, because this is essentially where you push your code to. Think of it like a file storage for your code, which then gets pushed to Netlify to be hosted, and it talks to your backend in Supabase to do authentication and database management. So let's look at the requirements. I want to build an app. I want the UI to be clean, Apple-like UI. I want to have authentication where users can sign up or log in. And they have an onboarding quiz where they essentially have to answer a few questions, which then determines which news they'll see. I have some database schemas that are set up here with Claude itself, and that will be presented in an intuitive way to the user. I also have some environment variables, which is a key part of this tutorial, is understanding how you take your app from running locally on your machine to having it deployable live on the internet. So let me copy all this specification and I'll jump over into Claude Code. So ensure you have a new folder selected. You can just create a folder on your computer and there you can add the path for Claude Code. So I'm going to say create this new app. Now it has all the information already in there, so we'll just give that a minute. Okay, so Claude ran for a few minutes and it essentially finished. So it shows my project structure, which is essentially files and folders are created for the app. Now this is what you're going to be pushing to GitHub so that you can then deploy that on Netlify. You can ignore this next steps for a bit. Sometimes it would ask you to add your keys into a .env or environment file for you to be able to run this locally, which is what I would suggest. But for the case of this video, what we'll do, we'll jump straight into deploying this on GitHub and then on Netlify to host it. So before we do that, it did start the app locally on localhost 5173, which is just a port on your computer. And if I jump to that, you can see this is how it looks. Now I won't be able to sign up or log in or do anything yet because this is not linked to my database yet. So that's what we'll do next. So what I asked Claude is to push this into GitHub. So what it's doing now is it's pushing this into GitHub, and this is the link. So let me click on this. And now you'll see everything that was just created, all these files and structures are now present in GitHub. The reason I did this is so that I can now pull this into Netlify so that I can host it with the environment variables. So an environment variable is essentially just an API or some secret key so that it can speak to different components. For example, I have my Supabase URL, which would be the URL that I find on Project Overview. So this long code over here. It will ask my anonymous key, which is, depending on what version of Supabase you're using, would be either your publishable key, or under API keys, it would be this secret key. And then lastly, your news API key, which is the one we've created over here. Now, I know that I am showing all these APIs on YouTube, but all of these would be voided and deleted the moment that this video is uploaded. So let's have a look. I have all my files up on GitHub now. So let's see what's next. So now we'll go to Netlify. Then at the top right, we'll click on Add New Project. I'm going to say import a Git repository, and this is going to authorize to my GitHub. So this is linked to GitHub, and I will say configure Netlify app. I'll choose my GitHub. Now that I've authenticated, I can scroll down and I can say select a repository, and we will be able to see that briefed is in there. So save this. This links all your GitHub repos into Netlify so that you can then host them. So I'll click on briefed, and I can now deploy it, or I can add environment variables, which I need to do, but let me just deploy this first. So now you'll see that this is building. So it is essentially taking all the code from GitHub, which is over here, and it is now pushing it onto a server so that it can be hosted live. And as you can see, it has completed. The nice thing about Netlify is it gives you a link. So this link would now show everything that was locally hosted on my computer, and it's hosted on the internet right now. So let's take a step back quick. So we started off with getting our requirements on Claude Chat. We took that over to Claude Code, where we made sure that we have a separate folder made on our computer, and we linked that separate folder. It essentially created the entire app, and it ran that for us locally. But we don't want that just yet. We want to push this to GitHub. So I asked it to push it to GitHub so that I can then add my Supabase and my news API keys. So it pushed it to my GitHub into a new repository. We've loaded this up on Netlify, and now we can go to project configuration and environment variables to add those new ones. So let's add environment variables. Add a single variable. The first one we need to add is our Supabase URL. So you have to ensure that the key is the exact same as Claude gives you, as this is the one that's in the code. So how do you get that? On Project Overview, it would be this one. So you can copy the project URL. I'll put that in here. You can create that. We'll also have to create one for our Supabase secret, which is in project settings, APIs, and it's the non-public key. Now I know I'm showing all these keys on YouTube, but luckily when this video is out, all of these keys will be revoked. So now here we can create the anonymous key. Now it's fully deployed. We'll be able to go back to the app. We can do a hard refresh, which is just Command Shift refresh, and we'll be able to sign up. Now this might not work, as I've not added any database tables to Supabase, but let's see. So it didn't work, and that's purely because we've not created any database tables. So if you look on the table editor, you'll see there's nothing yet. So let's go back to Claude and say, give me a SQL I can run on Supabase to create all necessary tables. As you can see, my spelling is a bit off, but it doesn't matter for Claude. Now it's produced this. After I've asked Claude to give me a SQL that I can run on Supabase, I essentially go to SQL editor. Now the reason I do this is because there's no tables or database structure yet on Supabase. So our app doesn't know what to use yet. So after asking Claude to give us that specific SQL and running it in the SQL editor, we'll be able to go onto table editor and see our tables. Or you'll be able to go into database and see all the tables that exist. Under authentication, you'll be able to see anyone that signed up. So this is my email that I just used to sign up. So let's go back into the app. There we go. I've just signed up. Now let's see. I've not actually tested or seen this app before. Country you based? United Kingdom. Continue. What are you into? I like science and politics. Actually, let me do business instead. Continue. How do you like your answers? Full, summary, quick? I like summary. We've just built our very first app and deployed it live with a database, with user management and authentication. So let's see how this would look on a mobile. If you right click on your browser, you can click on inspect and then choose mobile. So this is what it would look like on a mobile. You have your feed, you have your profile. Let's choose light mode. And I can go through all of this feed. And now this is pulling straight from the news API. And we can check that by clicking on network. So on the network tab, as we can see, this is pulling through some information from the news API. Every time you click on local, it will load different API and it will pull information based on your own preferences. So now we can play around with the app. Let me choose light mode. I can edit my preferences. Let's say South African, because that's where I'm from. And I want sport and health. And that's the only two. And I want quick headlines. So on my feed, I'll see mostly sport. Some South African news, or rather world news, because I'm on the world news now. If I click on local, it'll show me all South African news. Well, some hockey, which isn't technically South African, so there's some optimization we can do. But let's go back to profile. Let's edit my preferences to be the United Kingdom, business, science, and politics. And I want summary, which is fine. Let's go to my feed. So now it's pulling through from this news API, which we can see in the network, and it's trying to get information based on what my preferences are. It's not working right now, so we can go into console and we can see something failing. Console is very useful. This is where you can copy any error messages to go back to Claude to fix it. So let's click on one since we have it. Let's click on this one. And it opens up quite briefly. I can read the full article, which then takes me to the actual article. Or I can save this. And all of this was created with one prompt. And lastly, let's see where that saved news story of mine went. If I go to table and I look at saved articles, I'll be able to see just that article saved. I'll be able to see user preferences for my specific user, which is World and Technology, and I'll be able to see my user itself. Let's quickly refresh what we did. From Claude Code, we were asked it to create an app. We uploaded that code into GitHub by asking it to push it into our GitHub repository. On Netlify, we pulled that specific repository in. We went to project configuration to add environment variables of Supabase. We've created Supabase, and we asked Claude to give us a SQL query to run to create the tables. This is a SQL query, and the tables we created are user preferences and saved articles. It also has authentication, where all users sign up and authenticate through Supabase. We got our news API, and we added our Supabase and news APIs all to the environment variables of Netlify, and we triggered another deploy. And now our app is ready to be used, showing us world news and local news. Happy coding. Thanks for watching.
Now let's see how this looks on mobile. There we go. Quite snappy. Still has my saved content here. I can swipe to remove, which is not even a feature that I explicitly added, but it works. Let's click on light mode. Let's change my preferences. And now we'll be able to see our newsfeed. Works pretty well. There's a local tab as well that shows me any local news, and I'll be able to click into them and have a quick read and potentially save this. Let's sign out And there you go. Thanks for watching.